Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Song radio show. My name is Leon Jones, and this evening I'm getting into another political ideology, but it's going to combine the Democrats and socialism together. And I'm going to talk about democratic socialism. And the reason why I'm doing this video is because there is a group out there that believes in no borders, massive redistribution of wealth, they also believe in government running everything. Open borders. They mention they don't want ICE. And it's similar to the Poor People's Campaign, which was set up by Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King wasn't able to see it. It didn't last around. It didn't last that long. Set up in 1968. Now, if you look at the Democratic Party right now, what they're doing now, and you see it in New York City, Mondami, he's endorsed individuals who believe strongly in democratic socialism. And a number of people are foreign nationals, particularly women. This is why I don't want women in politics. Women have always been, and I'm just generally speaking, they've always been into more or less government for equality. They can't produce anything on their own, so they want the government to do everything for them. This is what gives them that artificial power. It's the government. You look at child support, it's about confiscation. But if you look at the Democrats, they want to subsidize everything, the socialist way. Now, again, we're going to look at what's going on with these foreign nationals as well. You look at Dearborn, Michigan. Everything has been converted from America to basically Islam. Now, I always believe that as an American, if I go into somebody else's country, I have to respect that culture of that country. You have a lot of these individuals. Now, you want to know where terrorism is going to come from? A lot of people on the left, they're socialists. You know, in Dearborn, Michigan, you have people like Mondami. They're actually buying churches, converting them into mosques, and they're actually bringing what we have been fighting over here. Now, I've seen a number of democratic socialists out here, and the bottom line is they don't like capitalism, they don't like families. This is what all that DEI stood for. This is what all that woke up. It's all part of the agenda to either overthrow the government. Now, what the Democrats want to do, the socialists, they don't want a president, they don't want the Senate, they don't want police, they want the House to have all of the power. They want to expand the Supreme Court. You have to understand this. A lot of people are under a rock. So I'm going to keep you informed of what's going on with the Democratic Socialists of America. They have their own flag, but the Democratic Socialists, what they've done, they've infiltrated the Democratic Party, which means what they're trying to do is force the establishment Democrats out. Now, the establishment Democrats are not paying attention. I mean, they don't want people like Chuck Schumer. They don't want they don't want anybody in there who is established. And a lot of these individuals are young. In fact, there's one individual who has never had a job. And she actually won a primary in New York. And she's a PhD student. And these individuals are taught to hate. But this is the problem with the socialists. Many of them don't have jobs, but they want to wreck this country. And this is where the Democrats are fighting each other. You think MAGA is fighting the Republicans? Well, the Democrats have a lot of infighting as well. In fact, the Democrats, when it comes to elections, they want to abolish the Electoral College, the Democratic Socialists. They really want more than one party. They want to do it like Canada. And the Democratic Socialists, if I'm not mistaken, they were actually a merger of two other organizations, which became the Democratic Socialist in 1982. Furthermore, when we look at the Democratic Socialists, they have approximately, I want to say, between 105 and 110,000 members. But see, these are the individuals that they're pro-Palestine, they're against Israel. Again, they're against ICE, they're against capitalism, they're against families, they're against the modern America, they're against the Constitution. They want to rewrite the Constitution. Now, let me get into my PowerPoint and my definition, and let's talk about democratic socialism. All right. Democratic socialism, or a socialist democrat. It's a left-wing political ideology, or it's an identity. It's not an ideology, it's an identity. But it is under the political ideology of socialism. So I'm going to go ahead and state it this way. A socialist democrat, or democratic socialist, is a left-wing political identity that advocates for transitioning to a socialist economy through democratic means. Rather than seeking a revolutionary overthrow, they want to use existing democratic processes to give ordinary people control over the country. Now, the ideology breaks down into two main concepts. You have democratic socialism and social democracy. So, when we look at democratic socialism, the goal, they believe capitalism is incompatible with true freedom and equality. They want to eventually replace capitalism with a system where key industries and workplaces are collectively or publicly owned. The approach, they work within parliamentary and electoral systems to incrementally shift power from corporations to workers. The key platform goals in the United States, advocates like the Democratic Socialists of America campaign for policies such as universal health care, or they actually don't even want health care. They actually want to expand to universal Medicare for all. They want rent control. This is what Mondami is pushing in New York, strong labor. And they want a Green New Deal. Now, when you look at social democracy, unlike the traditional democratic socialists, and here's what people don't do. This is why I like to read. See, the social democrats don't seek to abolish capitalism. Instead, they believe in taming it to prevent inequality. Now, the approach, they focus on building strong safety nets, heavily regulating major industries, and utilizing progressive taxation to redistribute wealth. Real world examples. The model is most commonly associated with Nordic countries like Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, which balance a free market economy with universal public services, tuition-free higher education, and comprehensive welfare programs. Now, in modern politics, the Democratic Socialists and progressives often vote together with liberal coalitions, such as within the U.S. Democratic Party. However, socialist Democrats stand further to the left than mainstream liberals because they actively challenge the foundational principles of the unchecked corporate power and private wealth accumulation. Now, what these Democratic Socialists want, they're talking about turning power over to the workers, which that is never going to happen. So they actually want to run the economy. So it's basically borderline communism. They want to basically abolish capitalism altogether. Now, they're not doing it again through a revolution where they're burning down everything. What they're doing, they're using the Democratic Party. And the Democrats aren't even paying attention because some of the Democrats are on board for it. This is where you see the feminism, the racism. This is when you see all these isms that are the coalitions in the Democratic Party. And you have to understand this. The Democratic Party is the oldest party in America. But these individuals, they're going to try it in New York. Now, the funny thing about New York is about 40 to 45% of the people who voted for Mondami, they weren't New Yorkers. They were foreign nationals. And see, this is what the Islamists want. They want to come over. They actually want to take over this country through going through the Democratic Party, elective means. Now, if you look at a number of cities, Chicago, New York, LA, I believe Colorado, Houston, Dearborn, Michigan, these are the cities that if you walk into those cities, particularly Dearborn, Michigan, even the police cars, they have Arabic writing on them. So you would think you were in the Middle East when you're here in America. And let me tell you something. See, with a number of these Arabs coming over here, you think they believe in women's rights? No, they don't. I've been to the Middle East. I've worked with a number of Middle Eastern guys in the field of engineering. Of course, the Democratic Socialists, they want free college. They want the government to run everything. But here's the catch. You see, when you have a lot of these political ideologies, no, they want us to suffer why they become the fat cats. And let me give you an example. You look at people like Kim Jong-il. It's a fat cat. You look at him, he's round. He's not skinny, he's fat. Because he's taking all the people's money while the people are poor. No, communism doesn't work. Russia tried. Now, China is a communist country. Cuba's communist. China's communist. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. But you have a number of people who are coming over here from those countries. And instead of assimilating again here in America, they're bringing their culture right here under the American Constitution. Now, you let Americans go over to their countries, they would be beheaded. And you see those Islamic countries don't like America. They call us infidels. And you're an infidel if you don't believe in the Islamic religion. Now, part of the Islamic religion is you have theocracy mixed in as well. And what is a government of theocracy? It's where the religious bodies run the government. But here in America, you have so many people who are uneducated. They don't pay attention. They repeat what they hear on TV. And see, what's happening now is you really got the corporate zealots. They're buying into it. They're paying their media personnel to lie. You get online, you have a number of individuals lying. Well, people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, got people like that running. And these are young people. And then a number of women, what they're doing, they're not getting the ugly women. They're getting polished women. Like that one who's running in Colorado. Real dainty. But you got to listen to what they say. Because a number of these individuals are women. And the reason why they're women, because women are easily controlled. I don't care what particularly a black woman, oh, you can't. Yeah, you can, because a number of you are also voting for that democratic socialism. And you're getting your zesty men, they're voting for it as well, but it's more women. Mark my word. This is why you don't vote for Democrats. And I want you all to share this video and shout out to people like Professor Nez and Dr. Steve Turley for putting all this information out. Now, I'm going to go to the PowerPoint and I'm going to break it down to you with the economics for democratic socialism. Now, libertarian socialism. Well, if you look at the government, not everybody who hates the government loves capitalism. P.J. Proudhon, known as a founder of anarchism, said property is theft. The idea is that capitalist property is basically exploitative and it cannot exist without a strong state to enforce it. Proudhon was notoriously anti-Semitic, so that means he's against the Jewish people as well. Anarchism 1. Anarchism advocates the abolition of all domination of one person by another, including government. There may be some disagreement about timing. Philosophic anarchists expect government eventually to be eliminated. Revolutionary anarchists say the government needs to be eliminated now. Now, a fairly common argument from Proudhon is that once artificial restraints such as government are removed, natural human solidarity will emerge. There seems to be no basis in experience for this romantic view. So you want anarchy, that means there's no order. You have to have some government. Anarchism too. Well, you have to look at this as well. Anarchist tendencies have emerged from a number of political movements. American abolitionism. When you're an abolitionist, these were ones who were against slavery. So it's called American abolitionism. Garrison was one of the forefronts. Then you have your individualist anarchism. Benjamin Tucker, the Russian Terrorist Party, anarcho-communism, Bakunin, Kropotkin. Then you have your labor unions, anarcho-syndicalism. Now, anarchists reject majority house rule because the minority is dominated by the majority. Anarcho-communism. Now, the synthesis of anarchism and communism is based on the idea that small scale communities would control non human means of production on a basis of census, and that the larger scale organization would be coordinated by agreement or, if necessary, markets. Now, this may be said to be utopian in the sense of Martin Buber proposals for social organization as if human aspiration were a determinant. Then you have labor Zionism. It's a highly successful collectivist movement in many ways, and it was strongly influenced by anarcho communism. Now you have anarcho syndicalism. Anarcho syndicalism. That's what that word is. It's syndicalism. So the anarcho syndicalists advocated that labor unions take over control of production and they build up a state by their federation. Now, some anarcho syndicalists envision society as constituted from the bottom up by a very complex system of voluntary organizations. So you have all these people who don't have jobs. So they want to form these organizations. So a related tendency, guild socialism, advocated something like a return to the structure of a medieval city, with the unions transforming themselves into guilds and constituting a state and an economic plan from the bottom up. Now you have the individualist anarchism. Now, an American individualist anarchism was not pro-capitalist. Tucker attacked government measures basically to suppress labor unions in his time and defended the labor unions as voluntary associations of individual workers. Thus, individualist anarchism was closer to anarcho syndicalism than the anarcho capitalism that emerged from free market thinking back in the 1960s. Then you bring on libertarian. Now, you hear a lot of people saying, well, I'm a libertarian. Many people don't even know what a libertarian is. Now, there is a libertarian party. Now, the word libertarian was synonymous with the anarcho communism about 1858 to 1960. So that's 102 years. Well, in about 1960, extreme free market conservative coined the word for the first time, so far as they knew for their own tendency. Needless to say, anarchists are more than a little bitter about this act of theft. Now you have anarchism 3. In a very few instances, anarchist groups have found themselves in control of territory in the context of civil war. Now the Magnavo China in the Ukraine, the Catalonia in the Spanish Civil War. They did not make compromises, arguably unavoidable in wartime, and they still lost. Then you have your monochrist libertarian socialism. One useful idea from free market libertarians is the distinction of anarchism and monarchism. So, monarchist is basically a libertarian, and that's what it is. It's monarch. It looks like Christ, but it's not. It's monarchist, libertarian socialism. Again, dealing with monarchist, libertarian socialism. Again, this is why I've been doing these political ideologies, so you know exactly what I mean. So going back over this whole slide, your monarchist, libertarian, socialist. It is one useful idea from free market libertarians, and that's the distinction of anarchism and monarchism. Now, monarchism is a libertarian whose aim is to reduce domination or command relations of their least practical extent rather than doing away with them. The least practical extent could still be pretty comprehensive, but that's not what monarchists suppose. So, one strategy is to have many power centers, each limited and balanced by the others. Well, if you think about the government, the branches of government, the local, state, and federal, in, in the Constitution, it was written that one branch of government should not have power over the other branch of government. Now, in practice, anarcho syndicalists and social anarchists seem monarchist rather than strictly anarchist. A sketch of Guild Socialism 1. In a local community, the workers in various activities organize themselves into guilds to administer their production and the guilds into a guild congress. Those who would produce public goods are grouped as the civil guilds. Councils are formed for other functions such as health, cultural, collective, which that's public utilities, and consumers, corporate societies. It follows that there must be in the society as many separately elected groups of representatives are there. Well, they're there and they distinct essential groups of functions to perform. Again, under a sketch of Guild Socialism 1, it follows that there must be in the society as many separately elected groups of representatives as there are distinct essential groups of functions to be performed. Now you have a sketch of Guild Socialism 2. These groupings are federated to form the local commune and they send representatives to a communal council. And at the same time, the local guilds for coal mining, leather working, wind power generation, and so on are federated into regional, national, and perhaps international guilds for these purposes. Similarly, health councils, cultural councils, consumer co-ops, and so on have their own regional, national, and perhaps international federations. The regional or national commune is simultaneously a federation of communes at the next level and the guilds and functional federations at its own level. Again, folks, they don't teach you this in school. I'm teaching it to you right now for free. This is why you need to share this video and get educated. Do your own research. Now, again, a sketch of Guild Socialism 3. Now, again, everything is pointing right to the commune. You have your local, and here's a map, your local or regional commune. You have your guild. Your guild goes up to your guild's congress. And then if you look at your guild and your guild's congress, everything goes to the commune, your cooperative society, your collective council, your cultural council, and your health council. Then you have supply and demand. The Guild's Congress concerns itself with the adjustment of supply and demand. Prices and targets of production are determined by negotiating among the various guilds and councils. In case of impasses, decisions are arbitrated by the next more inclusive council. For example, if the auto production guild and the steel guild disagree on prices, and production targets for steel, the issue would be arbitrated by the communal council. In this way, in effect, the Guild's Congress generates an economic plan by negotiation. In other words, nothing would get done. Because with this, it's almost all egalitarian and utopian. Let's get back to anarchism. Well, the civic services are funded by direct transfers between the industrial and civil guilds. Again, it's all by negotiation. Thus, no taxation of individuals. Since individuals are not taxed, the commune is indeed not a state as Schumpeter uses the term. Markets. Cole, writing before 1920, did not envision a role for markets. Indeed, he wanted no material incentives for production, those workers being put on their honor to do their best. However, markets could play a big role, especially if enterprises were free to determine their outputs locally while prices were negotiated at the level of the national commune. Assessment 1. See, I'm putting all together. This is what the democratic socialists envision in an economy. And I'm beginning with assessment 1. The dispersion of power into many groups might secure the greatest possible individual liberty consistent with equality and more or less efficient production. Perhaps there would be a practical approximation of unanimous direct democracy or of equity in a sense of non-envy. Again, it's all wishful thinking, but we can be sure of these things. If negotiation is costly, the approximation to efficiency might be rather poor. There would be a lot of negotiation, and there would be a lot of poor people. There would be no progress at all. Assessment 2. There are real-world precedents. It seems that medieval city-states were, at least in some cases, composed by their guilds somewhat in this way. However, this picture is post-revolutionary, precisely because it envisions the reconstitution of the state from below. It presupposes that the capitalist state no longer exists unless we suffer a quite general social collapse, which God help we don't. And it seems unlikely that capitalism will never go away. In summary, capitalism and liberty march together only on the town square, not on the highway. For one older sort of libertarian, capitalism requires state-enforced property, and so a strong state both should be rejected. However, the rejection of all compulsory organization poses problems for predictability, efficient use of resources. That's predictability or predictable, efficient use of resources. Some compromises seem inevitable. Guild socialism provides one instance of a carefully thought out set of compromises. And again, you're dealing with a lot of theory. Now, again, we are not Denmark. We're not Sweden. They don't have a lot of people. And then you have to look at those countries as well. How tight are they when it comes to immigration laws? Because, see, a lot of illegal immigrants have been getting funded by welfare benefits by us taxpayers here in America. And also, are people in Sweden or people in Norway, those countries, they have less people. I bet you they believe in their country even more than Americans believe in their country. And it's more of a melting pot where everybody's coming here rather than Denmark, Sweden. This is what people don't understand. They keep comparing us to those countries. Well, with less people, you can do a little bit more. You don't have people running rampant. Crime isn't running rampant. And again, when you have any type of system, there's always there's more than a probability. There's going to be corruption. Again, you look at all Mussolini, you look at all these guys, fat cats, because what they did, they lied to the people by taking from the people to enrich themselves. And you look at people like Genghis Khan of Cambodia, killed 2 million of his own, well, it was 10 million of his own people. Mao Zedong of China, Fidel Castro. You also look at Stalin. Now, the only one that was on the right, two were on the right, you had Hitler and you had Mussolini. These are all dictators. And the funny thing about individuals who are coming here, they're coming from dictatorships, but at the same time, want America to be a dictatorship. So, newsflash, where's the common sense? So you're coming from a dictatorship, but yet you want to really be in a dictatorship because you hate America. And see, that's what the Democratic Socialists of America, they have America at the end, but they don't like America. Now, I'm just going to say this for individuals who don't like this country, leave. Look at Rosie O'Donnell. She left. She's in Ireland. Go join her. If you really believe that this country is bad, now this country has had its hangups. So you have a lot of these people who never fought for anything. They're running around being these little social organizers. And all this really propped up. And it's before Obama. It's before Clinton. I mean, you have people like Cloward and Bivens. They wanted to collapse the system to start something new. But what socialism is really advocating is government takeover of everything, the production, universal basic income. See, it sounds good at the surface, but when you scratch it deeply, it's no good at all. It doesn't work. And the uneducated, what it is, you have all these billionaires and everything. It's all about envy. But do you think these liberals out here, like Stephen A. Smith, he claims he's independent. All these liberals out here, Beyonce, Jay-Z, these athletes, yeah, they might be liberal in thinking. They're liberal in thinking. But do you believe that they want to have their income confiscated? No, because they want to stay elite. Now, they want people like me to be poor and me to pay everything, because that's really, if you look at everything, it's about controlling the masses of people. Religion controls the masses of people. Education, even social media. This is why I tell you about the 5 power conferences of society. Your job controls you. Religion controls you. Media. Government controls you. Education controls you. And if you look at it, they have a lot of money. Politics is a lot of money. And you have a number of people like George Soros, he's funding a lot of this. There's an individual who is a communist, living in a communist country, and I believe he gave Marjorie Taylor Greene some money, $7 million. One of these left wingers out here. A lot of what you see, individuals are getting paid. See, they hate capitalism, but at the same time, they're getting capital from people like George Soros. Hypocrites. And really what it is they want to confuse us. See, when you're not educated, you're going to be easy to fool because, for the most part, you're gullible. This is why they're choosing a lot of women. I don't see them going after a lot of men. And the minute they're going after, like what is it, Telefaro of Texas, talking about there's 6 binary genders. Then you got this knucklehead up in Maine wearing a Nazi sticker, but he's not a Nazi. But see, you're going to have dumb Democrats vote for these guys. They're not about country. They don't like Trump. That's a dumb reason to vote. And the Democrats aren't going to like any Republican you put in there unless that Republican is kissing their ass. And that's really what it's about. This is what you see on social media now, particularly when it comes to black. This is why when I hear a black woman talk about divine femininity, that's all bullshit. All divine femininity is, it's feminism. You don't want to listen to a man. That's all it is. Sometimes it's not, you got to listen to what people say and you got to look at what they do. A lot of people are hypocrites out here. They don't sit back and think. They love to have an opinion because an opinion makes them believe that they're powerful. And when Obama was in office, he gave everybody a false sense of power. Hope is just false. This is why I don't believe in hope. You're either going to get out there and get it or you're not. And that just depends on the person. See, you can legislate what you believe in, but you're not going to legislate what people really believe. That's the problem. And that's why here in America, they don't like what Trump is doing. We saw years and years of wokeness. Now these individuals expect everybody to believe what they believe in. No. Not going to convince me that there are 6 genders out here. You're going to convince these Gen Zers and maybe some of the Gen Ys, and this is what you do. You rewrite history, you take everything out of textbooks, and the people that are easily dumbfounded right now are some of your Generation Ys, your later ones, and your Generation Zs, and even your Generation Alphas. Now, I believe it's going to turn back around because all this authoritarianism, these individuals don't like law. But if the Democrats were in power right now, they would be going after Republicans left and right, putting them in jail. They would be canceling conservatives because you're real fascists and you're authoritarians. I'm not saying you don't have any extremists on the right, you do. But most of your extremists who put it out there via action are from the left. It's because a lot of us don't believe in what they're doing, but they want to force it down our throat. I'm not forcing anything down somebody from the left's throat because in the end, you make your decision on what you need to do with your life. Now, I will tell you this, not everybody's going to own a business. Not everybody's going to run for office. This is what I tell you. You got your Kendra G's in the world talking about, oh, I got my money and all that. Nobody cares about your money. Because somebody could take you out today and what would happen to that money? You won't be able to spend it. You have a lot of individuals out here thinking that because they make money and they have a bunch of materials that they're upper class. Many of those people are utilizing credit cards. They're financing cars. They're not paying for cars outright. That's one thing I can say about America. A lot of things that are here are also scams as well. But the bottom line, you think socialism, any type of socialism is great. I urge you to go live in a socialist country or a communist country. So to round up everything on what I've delivered today, and this is for educational purposes only, a socialist Democrat or democratic socialist, it's a left-wing identity that advocates for transitioning to a socialist economy through democratic means. Rather than seeking a revolutionary overthrow, they want to use existing democratic processes to give ordinary people control over the economy. This ideology breaks into two main concepts: democratic socialism and social democracy. And we are a republic here. Now, for the democratic socialism, the goal, they believe capitalism is incompatible with true freedom and equality. They want to eventually replace capitalism with a system where key industries and workplaces are collectively or publicly owned. So, in other words, they want to push government to own corporations. That'll never happen. They want to push government to run the economy, i.e., you look at the old Soviet Union, look at Fidel Castro's Cuba, Kim Jong il's North Korea. Now, the approach with democratic socialism is they work within parliamentary and electoral systems to incrementally shift power from corporations to workers. Your key platform goals in the United States, advocates like the Democratic Socialists of America campaign for policies such as universal Medicare for all, a Green Deal, rent control, and strong labor protections. And under social democracy, the goal, unlike traditional democratic socialists, social democrats do not seek to abolish capitalism. Instead, they believe in taming it to prevent inequality. So their approach is they focus on building strong social safety nets by heavily regulating major industries and utilizing progressive taxation to redistribute wealth. Real world examples. Again, I just told you about this model. This is a model that's mostly associated with the Nordic countries like Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, which don't have as many people. You don't have a lot of immigrants flowing into those countries. Those countries are mainly, they're cold and they're all whites for the most part. Because they believe countries like Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, they create a balance, which is a free market economy with universal public services, which give you tuition for free higher education, in other words, free college and comprehensive welfare programs. And where they stand in modern politics, democratic, socialists, and progressives often vote together within liberal coalitions, such as within the U.S. Democratic Party. However, socialist Democrats stand further to the left than mainstream liberals because they actively challenge the fundamental principles of unchecked corporate power and private wealth accumulation. In other words, you have a number of individuals out here who are lazy and they want to jump in the government because they're envious. They've been brainwashed by education, because that's the big problem. Colleges have done a lot of brainwashing. They've told individuals that you need to go to school to get a degree, not work with your hands. And it takes everybody to keep this country running. But when you have people that don't want to compete because they believe that they don't have to compete, they have everything given to them. They don't want to be part of the country. Kennedy said it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. A lot of these individuals, they don't like this country. They don't want to make any sacrifices, but yet they want the benefits of this country. And that's what all these illegals want. There's a lot of money that's going into a lot of these coalitions. There's a lot of money that's going to be put into these midterms. So if you're really going to be free, have free thought. Don't allow yourself to be a captive of what the media says, or what your colleges say, what religion, what you hear on social media, what your government says, and what your job says. Because in essence, we will never go full blown capitalism because a number of individuals, they tell you about communism, but these organizations are 50c3, getting a lot of money themselves. A lot of these groups out here are hypocrites because when a dollar is right, many people do change their mind. But in essence, what I'm here to do is to educate you to have free thought. Why? Because knowledge is power. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you are looking for some STEM content, check out the QCIS channel. On that channel, giving you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, here's where you can find me, right here on the 401 Talk Zone radio show. Find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter. You can also find me on Rumble and Truth Social. For the QCIS channel, you can find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. And once again, don't be envious. Materials don't make the person. The character makes the person. So I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you have. The bottom line is you might be able to spend more, but I guarantee you, the average person who has a lot of money has a lot of debt, particularly if you went to school for bad college degrees. So I'm going to say this. To eliminate all the envy, in realistic terms, there's always going to be some envy. You're going to have individuals that want what you got. But these are the individuals that are too lazy to go out and get something, for the most part. And in the end, I'm going to say this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. And if you don't like the shoe, just change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. I want you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.